Today, we're talking about the age-old question, is speed or spin better in table tennis? Is there a simple answer, Alois?
There is no simple answer, but I think one really important thing for us to think about is we need to think about that question.
Absolutely. But surely speed is more important. Just hit the ball fast, win the points.
Not necessarily.
Okay, so what are some important things to think about when we're thinking about speed versus spin?
So speed often feels like it's the answer because you want to just smack it past them or serve it fast past them. But if you can also incorporate spin, and sometimes less speed, more spin can be more effective.
Interesting. Now, I think maybe it's simplistic to think this way, but when I first thought about sports and stuff, yeah, like I said, I think you think speed is better. And like if you're watching tennis, they always measure the speed of the serve.
Yeah.
Table tennis, they never measure the speed of the serve. So I think with serving, and I think this is the big difference between like just starting out in table tennis and then going to a table tennis club where you see it, and then at the highest level, spin on the serve is crucial.
Yeah, the critical factor here is in table tennis, you have to bounce the ball on your side of the table for the serve. So that really limits the speed that you can serve with.
Interesting. I wonder, what is the fastest serve you can do in table tennis?
I don't know. I've seen a few fast ones, but they are not very effective because there just isn't that much area to cover on the table. So like as fast as you can make it, it's pretty easy for the better players to just be able to cover that area.
Yeah, so it's pretty hard to actually serve an ace, yeah. And I guess you would see when they're going to serve a really fast serve as opposed to when they're serving, well, maybe you can disguise it a bit.
Yeah, you can disguise it, but again, the maximum speed compared to the coverage area is just usually not enough.
Okay, so on a serve, often spin is better?
On the serve, spin is most of the time is the key.
Okay, yeah. And I guess, we've got a video all about serving else, but variation of spin is really where the winning tactics come in.
Yeah, so it's variation of spin and disguise of your spin. So just being able to serve the same action with subtle changes in the type of spin that you're putting.
Yeah, excellent. And now we've also talked a lot at PingSkills here about topspin and how that gets the ball to dip down. So topspin's a real key in actually being able to hit the ball faster.
Correct. Yeah. So the Magnus effect.
Oh, yes. Very professional.
We get very scientific here. Yeah. So the Magnus effect means that the ball is going to dip quicker when it's got spin on the ball. So as the ball's spinning, there's something to do with the air flows and stuff.
Yes, air pressure.
What happens is more spin, the ball dips quicker onto the table. So that means that if you hit the ball really hard, no spin, it's just going to keep sailing off the end. If you hit the ball fast with spin, it's going to dip onto the table. So there, even when you are talking about extra speed, adding topspin is going to be beneficial for you.
Yeah. And I guess the opposite with the defensive stroke where you're putting that backspin, that almost gets the ball to almost float up a little bit. So with a backspin shot, there really is a limit to how fast you can hit that backspin stroke. So spin becomes really important for backspin or defensive play.
Yeah, that's right. So if you're coming underneath the ball, okay, so obviously if you hit the ball really hard like that, it has to keep sailing off and the ball's almost lifting, if anything. Gravity sort of works against that and pulls it back down. But there is that lift, which means that you have to be really precise if you're going to play the ball faster to get the ball on the table as well with a push or the backspin.
So is it simple to say that maybe spin is better for a defensive player, but speed is better for the offensive or attacking player?
Not necessarily. No.
Oh.
Again, we see this even at the very, very top level of table tennis. Often the thing that spectators notice is the speed. Like they see that ball traveling really fast. But if you really watch the top players, it's the subtle changes in the speed and the subtle changes in the spin that get the greatest effect. So it's often not the fast shot that wins the point. It might be the shot that's hit at 70%, but with a little bit more spin that actually wins the point.
Okay. So, if you were forced to pick one, speed versus spin, what would you go for? You can only pick one.
Spin.
Spin, okay.
Spin. In table tennis, spin.
Yeah.
Because that's the real thing that can separate you from the next level player. If you can start to spin the ball better, you can start to do a lot more. And remember, if we're trying to hit the ball fast, spin's important.
Yeah. So table tennis is a game of spin, isn't it? And I guess from the very beginner level, that's the biggest difference. You've got rackets that can't generate any spin, and so there's just very little spin involved, and the ball doesn't spin off your racket. So, and then you go to the club for the first time, and suddenly you're like, oh wow, look at all this spin, and it blows your mind. So at that level, just that first little jump, spin is really important. But as you said, even as you get higher and higher, that spin is still critical.
You're completely right. And at that beginner level, just being able to start to spin the ball a bit, and it's not like trying to do crazy spins, it's just starting to work with that little bit of top spin or a little bit of backspin is where you're going to also be able to shape your strokes better. So, and that's why we recommend that players, when they're starting out, just get a racket that is reasonable and has, some sponge underneath it, a good grippy surface, just so you can start to learn to play your strokes correctly rather than just doing, pushy tennis strokes.
Yeah, exactly. So it seems to me like we've chosen spin as the most important thing. Spin is better than speed.
Spin is king.
Spin is king.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like you said, if you want to hit that really fast shot, you use the spin to create the speed in some way because of that Magnus effect.
Yes. Well, yeah, you use the spin to be able to control the speed onto the table.
I like that. You use the spin to control the speed.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yep.
All right. Well, hopefully you've enjoyed that discussion. Now we're going to move on to some Fix It Fast techniques for you. Welcome to Fix It Fast, where we discuss the 3 most common errors with speed and spin and how to fix them. So, Alois, what is the first common problem you see with spin and speed?
The first thing I see is that people often think that more speed is always better.
Interesting, because I think it's important to be able to develop a fast forehand topspin.
Yeah, exactly. So the first thing is you need to develop that whole range of speed. To be able to hit the ball slowly, but you need to be able to hit the ball fast as well, so that your opponent then doesn't necessarily know where in that range you're going to be able to hit the ball.
Yeah, okay. So if you can only hit the ball slowly, maybe not great, but with that range, then the common mistake is people just think, now I can hit the ball fast, I should just always hit the ball fast and I'm going to win more points. But that's just not true.
No, exactly. So if you're always hitting the ball fast, it's often easier for the other person to just be able to sit in a position and be able to block the ball back or be able to lob the ball back or whatever it is.
All right, let's have a look at that.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Yes.
He got through me. Once I start to get the feel of the speed of Jeff's shot, then it does become a little bit easier. But if Jeff is starting to change the speed, then it's harder for me to know what's coming off Jeff's racket all the time. So I need to be really watching and be able to adjust between the faster ball and the slower ball.
And I guess with that faster ball coming, you can just sort of put it back. But then the slower ball comes, you've got to think, oh, is this different spin as well? So the spin and speed is adjusting. You've got to make all these subtle variations. Just makes your job a lot harder.
Yeah, that's right. I need to be able to react and to do something rather than just sit and put my racket at the ball.
Okay, so the first tip to fix these problems fast is just vary the pace, the spin and speed of your strokes. So a second common mistake I see, Alois, is that people think more spin is always better.
Yes, and this is similar to what we talked about with speed. So if you're thinking about generating more spin, that's good. And again, you need to be able to develop that range of spin. So for example, for your serves, you need to be able to spin them a lot, like really heavy spin. But then the wins often come with the variation. So being able to spin the ball heavily with backspin and then maybe less spin that is going to cause your opponent to hit the ball up a little bit higher.
Yeah. So with a simple example, with a really heavy backspin serve, show me a really heavy backspin serve. Oh, it just hits my racket, goes straight into the ground.
Yep.
And now I think I've got to put backspin on it because I think it's heavy and there's no spin on it. So because my bat's like this, it flies up in the air.
Yeah, the ball goes up. So it is about being able to develop a lot of spin, but the real wins come from the variation. So that means that more spin isn't always better. Sometimes less spin is better with your serves, with your topspin, with even your pushes. So when you're pushing, for example, if you push heavy, it's the same effect as we just talked about with the serve. If you push heavy, the ball's going to dive down off their racket. If you push with less backspin, then that push is going to come up a bit higher, which might give me a better opportunity to attack.
So you just show me a heavy push and then a light push. So heavy push, oh, that is heavy. And if I've got to lift that up and then show me a no spin, if I do the same thing, it goes way off the table because the backspin's not dragging it down.
Yes.
Okay. I think people often think that this more spin, less spin only applies to serves. But as you mentioned, really important with other strokes, the push, and people think about this even less with the topspin, which you said.
Yes.
Because a really heavy topspin one, I've got to get over it. Yeah. And then if you do like a topspin that doesn't have a lot of spin, that's actually tricky with that variation.
Yeah. Table tennis, they talk about it being like a chess game, like it's just pulling different moves all the time and different things that you're testing your opponent with. So if you're always giving them the same move, they know how to react straight away. If you're giving them different moves, then they need to start to think, react in a different way each time. Means that their brain needs to start to really process all of those changes, which just cuts down the amount of time that they have to be able to play that next ball.
Great. Excellent. So the quick fix here is vary the amount of spin you're putting on your serve and your strokes. And the third most common error we see with spin and speed is that people, when they're trying to get more spin or more speed, they try and put more effort into their shot. And this doesn't always lead to good results, does it, Alois?
No. And it's often how we're brought up, and it's a lot about culture too, We always think that the more effort that we put in, the better reward we're going to get out, or the better output that's going to come. Now, with your body and with table tennis specifically here, if we think about trying to generate more power, more speed on the ball, if I start to think about using more muscles, then what happens is that I'm starting to use my muscles in the wrong order, firing muscles that I don't need to generate more speed. So, for example, if I think about playing a forehand and I think about I'm going to really put as much effort in, what's actually happening is that this muscle here and this muscle here and this muscle here are starting to fire that don't need to. And you don't need to worry too much about which muscles you need to fire because there's so many, right? So just think about, how can I get my racket to move as fast as possible? Here, 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 and how smoothly you can get your racket to move.
I like that word, smoothly. Yeah.
Because if you think about power, the natural thing and I'm actually doing it here, what I've actually done is I've actually tightened my grip really strong around the racket, which means that these muscles here are tight, which means that these muscles are tight, which this and this and this, and tension doesn't equal power. Relaxed, smooth. So I'll show you this demonstration. If I'm thinking about more power and really gripping the racket hard, so what happens here? My wrist now becomes locked and I'm not getting anything out of my wrist or my fingers. Now look, when I relax, okay, look at what happens to my racket. Now it's moving twice as fast with less effort. So this allows the racket to move fast. This doesn't allow the racket to move fast.
Yeah, yeah. When you watch the top players, and it's often said, they make it look effortless.
Absolutely. And they make it look effortless because they're using less effort to play their strokes. Whereas if you look at the beginner trying to play a forehand, it's this and this. Yep. When one of the professionals is playing their forehand at that pace, all they're doing is this.
Yeah. So what's the fix it fast? We know this is a problem. If you're there and you're trying to, muscle the ball on, what's a quick tip to help you overcome this problem?
Really important to focus on your body initially, just to start with, and just see what's going on there. Have a feel of what is going on with your shoulder, your upper arm, your forearm, your wrist, your fingers. Just check the tension of your grip. If you do that, then you're going to start to, okay, I can feel that. One thing I often get players to do is when they're playing their forehand is to just put their free hand on their shoulder. And so that gives them some real good feedback on what that feels like. You can feel when your shoulder's tight, and you can feel when that joint is working smoothly as well.
Excellent. All right. Well, great tips, and hopefully they help you fix it fast. It's now time for the Ask the Coach section of our video. And first up, we have a question from Adam, who wants to know about spin, speed, and control. He says, sometimes I can generate spin, but I lose some speed. Sometimes I have speed, but no spin. And then sometimes I just have no control. So Adam wants to know, Alois, how do I develop spin, speed, and control?
Good question, Adam. That's a tough one. But I think the most important thing is to have different focus areas during different times in your training session or during different training sessions. So at some stage, start to think about, okay, so today I want to work on speed. If you're working on speed, don't worry about if the ball's going off the table too much. Don't worry if you don't have control, because if you're trying to develop speed, I want you to test the limits of what you can do.
So make some mistakes.
Make some mistakes. Mistakes are good. Not always good, but mistakes are good. Especially in training, mistakes are good. So if you're starting to think about, I want to develop a lot of speed. If you want to develop a lot of spin, the same thing happens, So if it's for your serve, for example, if I'm practicing and trying to just develop more spin, okay, sometimes I'm going to miss the ball completely on the serve.
Yeah, because you're trying for that fast brushing contact.
Yeah, and if you're trying to develop more spin, you have to get a fine contact, you have to get a fast contact, and so you're going to lose control and you're going to make a lot of mistakes.
Interesting. Now, if I'm working on a push and I want to do it faster and with spin, you're saying don't focus on both of those things at once.
Your level starts to increase. So you can start to develop more spin, and then, but it might be at that slower level. But then as you have developed your spin, then you can start to see if you can do it a little bit faster. For a top spin as well, like, you start by developing the forehand top spin. You don't start by developing the fastest forehand top spin with the most amount of spin that you can. Start to develop it slower, and then you can start to increase the speed and have the spin.
Very interesting. And we have a question about that coming up, Alois. So a good foreshadowing of a question ahead. Excellent. Well, so hopefully that helps you, Adam. So it seems like that the more control will come with that practice.
Yeah, the control element is always an interesting one, because control just means that stroke comes within your range of ability. As you're starting to develop speed, you're going to lose control. As you develop spin, you'll lose control. But eventually, as you improve, your speed of shot at 100k an hour is going to have more control, because it becomes within the realms of your abilities.
Excellent. That makes a lot of sense. Thanks for that question, Adam. Next up, we have a question from Jisoo and the question's titled, "What training videos don't teach you?" And he says, like, most videos show you hitting the forehand and it's just forehand to forehand and the ball's nice and consistent. But then he says, when I get into games, the ball never comes that consistently. So how can I train so that I'm ready for all the unexpected occurrences that happen in a game when the ball doesn't come nicely, it doesn't come with the same spin, doesn't come with the same speed?
Jisoo, that's a good one. And I often see this with players that are very trained. They might only train with their coach. They might only train with better players. They're always getting the ball coming to them at the right speed, because their coach or the better player is always controlling the ball for them. And they're controlling the ball to where they want the ball. It's really important in your training to hit with some players that aren't very good, to hit with players that are giving you just subtle changes all the time because perhaps they're not very good. They don't always hit the ball off the middle of their racket. Sometimes it comes here and here. Sometimes they can't control the ball the same way. It comes slower, faster. By accident, they put more spin or less spin on the ball. So those sort of players are really difficult to play against, but that means you need to train against that. And you also need to train a lot where you're not knowing what type of ball is coming and where it's coming to, because that's the reality of a game situation.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. So it seems like seek out unusual players and unusual styles and people that are better than you, people that are worse than you. And then also in your training, have more variability.
Yeah, more variability is key because that is the game of table tennis. Never in a game of table tennis do you know where the ball's coming to next.
There you go. Great question, Jisoo. And our third and final question is from Raj, who wants to know about speed versus accuracy. Now, Alois, Raj says when he's playing his forehand at full speed, it's often going into the net or going out off the edge of the table. So how does he develop a more powerful topspin when he's missing all the time, but when he plays nice and consistently and a bit more slowly, it goes on the table?
Similar to what we talked about in the first question here, the important thing is to first experiment with the speed, experiment with how fast you can hit the ball. And you might spray the ball all over the table to start off with, but eventually you'll start to be able to narrow the area that you're able to hit the ball. So initially, I might be hitting the ball and the ball's going off the end of the table and over the wrong side and everything. And eventually, as you start to get better and better, maybe you can start to get more balls on the table in the spot that you're really looking for. But it's a development process. So initially, just develop speed. Think about where you're trying to hit the ball, but don't be too focused on trying to hit the ball. Your first element of your training is how to generate more speed. Then as you start to generate more speed, you'll be able to start to control where the ball's coming.
Interesting. So do you think if he's got that forehand which is consistent and he's hitting that ball on the table, should he just spend 5 minutes just playing fast balls and not worrying about whether they go on and off? Or should he gradually try and increase the speed until and without losing that consistency?
Yeah, I think ramp up the speed to where you can, okay? And then you can start to think about, all right, now I'm going to put a little bit more importance on where the ball's actually going on the table as well. So first I'm just thinking about, all right, how can I generate speed? Okay, now I've got the ball to the speed that I want to, and you might dial it back a little bit, dial it back a lot, start to get the ball on and then go from there. So yeah, it's just that play.
Yeah, but what if I'm just getting no balls on the table? So it's very frustrating for my opponent. I just serve and then I whack it, it's off the table. I serve, I whack it off the table. It feels like I'm not making any progress if I'm doing that.
Yeah, the progress that you're making is starting to feel how you can generate more speed. The progress comes in being able to increase the speed. Now, you talked about a very important point there about your training partner. Now, this needs to be an understanding between you and your training partner. If your training partner is only there to try to improve themselves, okay, then that's going to be really frustrating. But if you talk to your training partner and say, all right, today, let's see if we can develop more power and how we can do it. I'll do a few, you do a few, et cetera, et cetera. It's a conversation that you and your training partner need to have as well.
Yeah. And so it sounds like this would be something you might concentrate for a small period of time. It's not like your only focus. So it's not like this is going to be it. And it's still consistency is still an important part of your training in different situations.
That's right. We talk about the structure of our training session, just having some real skill focus areas. So this is a skill focus area that you might do for 5 minutes or 10 minutes during your training session. For this 5 minutes, I want to focus on developing the smoothness of my stroke to be able to generate more speed with my shot.
Excellent. Thank you for that question, Raj. Welcome to Train Smarter, where today we're going to show you 3 ways you can improve your forehand topspin.
We're first going to start to think about how much spin we can generate on our forehand topspin. The way we're going to do this is we're going to play a game where Jeff is topspinning and I'm blocking. Now, the only way that he can win a point is if he can get me to block the ball off the end of the table.
Oh, so I'm trying to generate more topspin, which is going to force the ball to come longer.
Yeah. I win a point if he makes a mistake with his topspin.
Okay, let's give it a try.
All right, so it's 1-0.
What's to stop me from just like hitting it harder and harder and
All
harder?
right, we're gonna have a radar gun on this, Jeff.
A radar gun?
A radar gun. Nothing more than 78 k's an hour.
Okay, so I guess in practice you just say you can't hit it too fast.
That's right.
Okay.
Oh, that's a good spin. 1-1.
Oh.
1-2.
I was really trying to hit that, brush that really finely to get a lot of spin, and I just missed the ball completely.
Now you can see that Jeff is actually trying to think about how he can generate more topspin to win that point.
Yeah, so it actually focuses me a lot more on my topspin than if we were just playing without a game.
Yes.
Excellent. Great game. Love it. Excellent. Okay, Alice, what's your second tip for training smarter?
It's starting to develop speed, but really focusing on how relaxed you can be to generate that speed. It's difficult to measure speed, but what we're going to do is we're going to use a measure of Jeff hitting the ball, and then we're going to see how far it rebounds off the wall and how high up this wall that it lands. So the higher that it lands, that means the faster that he's hit the ball.
Hey, how do I know that I'm keeping my smoothness and not tensing up too much?
We're just going to have a look at the output to start with, and then we're going to see you can start to gauge for yourself which ones get you that ball.
So if I'm tensing up, you're telling me I'm just not going to be hitting it as hard, so it's not going to...
It's the theory.
Okay, well, let's give it a go.
Okay.
Up there, nice.
Oh, that's higher. Yes.
Now, if I tense up, let's see what happens.
You missed the ball.
Oh, I missed it again. Oh. 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 Like focusing on this, Alice, I can see when I do tense up, well, firstly, I'm missing the ball because I'm not relaxed, and then it's not going anywhere near up as high up the wall. Let me try a bit more relaxed again. What a big difference. I mean, that's pretty obvious straight away that the more relaxed I am, the higher up on the wall it's going, and more consistent as well. I'm making far fewer errors.
Yeah, and that's just good feedback for what's happening to the ball. And ultimately, that's what we're all about. It's about what's actually happening to the ball, not necessarily what you think you're trying to do.
Excellent. Okay, Alois, what's your third tip for improving your forehand topspin?
So the third game we're going to play today is one person top spinning, the other person blocking. Now, what we're going to see if we can get to is the variation of what Jeff's doing with the top spin, the thing that's going to win him the point, or what is it that actually gets him to win the point.
Okay, so just a normal game, 2 serves each?
Yeah, 2 serves each, but we're only going to serve with just a flat topspin. Jeff's only allowed to topspin for the whole game. I'm only allowed to block for the whole game.
So just a flat long serve so I can start topspinning?
Yep.
Now, I would think, but I guess it depends on the skill level, that the top spinner in general would have a big advantage here.
Yeah, usually would. And what you can do is start with a 1-for-1. If it's too uneven, if Jeff's dominating too easily, we can start to change the scoring a bit. So perhaps if the blocker wins a point, they get 2 points.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, excellent. But we're playing anywhere to anywhere, so I'm working on forehand and backhand topspin?
Yeah, because one of the things we also want to focus on is placement.
Okay.
So spin, speed, and placement.
All right, let's give it a whirl. Oh, my backhand. I need to work on my backhand topspin.
One love.
Oh.
Nice. 1-1. Your serve. Oh, nice. 2-1.
That one, I really worked on the placement. I hooked it out wide and they got me the point.
got to go to his backhand. So you can see there that what we're now starting to do is I'm really focused on the placement, and I've also started to identify the areas that Jeff needs to work on. So he needs to work on his backhand topspin. I need to work on my placement as well. When I started to give Jeff too many angles early, he was able to make me go wide. So it's a really good strategic game where you start to think about, as the top spinner, what do you need to do to improve your game?
Excellent. Give those 3 ideas a go and leave a comment to let us know which game you like best. So there you have it, spin versus speed. It seems like if there's just one you had to pick, you'd go with spin, but there's not just one you have to pick, Alois. So, I guess spin and speed work together.
Yeah, absolutely. So start to think about developing the range of your speed, developing the range of your spin, and then starting to be able to choose what level of speed, what level of spin that you can implement in the game.
Yeah, and leave a comment below to let us know, do you rely more on spin, speed, or are you working on that balance?
Yep.
And we're always looking for new topics, so if you have an idea for a show, again, let us know and we will see if we can incorporate your feedback. Thanks for watching. Make sure to check out the PingSkills website. We've got heaps of step-by-step tutorials, expert tips, training plans. Plus, if you've got a table tennis question, you can ask it right there on the site, pingskills.com.